Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is, well, there are a lot of topics today, but the one that I wanted to talk to you about is this is the epic battle part. This is the epic battle part. And the subtitle is Love Always Wins in the End. And I was writing about, kind of opened the essay with this experience that happened in high school. I had this friend I'm calling John, not his name. And, we were not extremely close, but we were definitely friends. We had been at school for a few years together at this point. This happened in 10th grade. We had been at, parties together. We were in several classes together. We would sit next to each other at assembly sometimes and laugh. We had a lot of friends in common, and he was definitely someone I considered a friend. I just didn't socialize with him one-on-one. And we were in the same English class, and there was this one particular day where he overslept, so he missed class, and we were having a test the next day. So he caught up with me after that class and asked me if he could borrow my notebook so he could know what to study. And I said it was totally fine. I just needed to get it from him by the end of the day. And I had to leave right when the bell rang after school because I had a dance class. I used to take ballet after school every day, and I would walk across the park. So I really needed to leave and go. So he said, no problem. And I said I would meet him outside the boys' locker room, which was on the same level as the girls' locker room. And there was this one classroom that was right outside the exit of the boys' locker room that was called Room Zero. And so I said, I'll meet you in Room Zero. The bell rings after school. I saw him later in the day. He high-fived me. We passed each other in the hallways as the day wore on. And then later, day ends, bell rings, I go running to my locker. I swap out the textbooks I need to bring home, and go to Room Zero, and I'm waiting. And there are all these, boys kind of pouring out of the locker room, and minutes are going by. And one of my good friends is in Room Zero with his girlfriend. And so, we were talking, and after a few minutes, I called in to the boys' locker room, and I said, John, are you almost out? I've got to go. And he yelled back that he was coming, but he sounded extremely aggravated. So much so that we all sort of we kind of laughed. Because he sounded so not pleased. And we were talking, and more time went by, and I started to really be worried I wasn't going to make it to my dance class if I didn't leave. And so, I was writing about, my mother used to have all these sayings when I was growing up, and a lot of them were negative, and it used to really bother me. It's always something was a big one of hers. I'll tell you, she would say oh, it's always something, or no good deed goes unpunished. And that phrase kind of popped into my head because I'm thinking like, did this guy, he gave him my notebook and here I am like, I've got to go. And can't he just like run my notebook out to me, whatever's going on in there? And the boys' locker room, like the coaches' offices were in there. And then you would have to walk through the boys' locker room to get to the gymnasium, which was just a terrible design flaw. Nobody wanted to walk into the boys' locker room. So I wasn't walking in because, you didn't want to like catch someone undressed or whatever. So I called in again. I said, hey, John, I've really got to go or I'm going to be late. So he comes flying out and barrels past me, kind of shoves into me and comes into room 0 and like, puts his bag down on a desk. And so I'm like exchanging glances with my friends. We're all kind of like, wow, he's coming into the room with a lot of aggression. And he whips my notebook out and flings it at me. And it hits me. And before I can even like respond to that, he is coming at me. He's like charging across the room, picks me up off my feet in like one motion. And at first kind of like flung me over his shoulder, almost like fireman's carry kind of thing. I remember being so confused, like wondering if he was joking because it was so crazy that nothing in my brain was just like, he's got to be joking. I don't know what else it could be. And he started spinning around. And as he was spinning, he kind of like flipped me over. So I was like upright. So I could see the ceiling. I could see like my friends. He was spinning around in a circle and getting momentum going. So I could see like the recessed lights kind of spinning by. I could see my friends every time I went by like in this circle, standing there just with their mouths open. And he basically built momentum and then flung me. And I went flying into a desk and hit the floor. This all happened in, less than a minute. And I was stunned. We all were. Everybody was just like shocked. I looked up at him, he grabbed his bag. It did not look at anyone, didn't say anything, and stormed out the door. My other friends came over to me immediately and asked if I was okay. They were like, all of us were just completely astounded. They helped me, stand up. I sat down in one of the desks. I was shaking. One of my wrists started to swell immediately. One of my knee and my hip on the same side were throbbing. My head, like the back of my head was hurting, and I reached back and it was tender. So I realized I must have like hit the back of my head on the desk on the way down. It was a full on assault. It was not, it was not mild. It was not funny. It was not okay. And I was shaking, and my friends asked me like, should we go to the office? Do you want us to get help? I didn't want that. I think I was just like so confused, and I was crying. And I said, like, I was trying to kind of replay the last few minutes leading up to what had just happened. And I said, did I sound really upset when I was calling in? And they were like, no, you were completely fine. You just sounded like someone who needed to go, but there was nothing, you were fine. So that's where I was. I was like questioning, is this somehow my fault? Did I do something, to bring that on? And I just could not make it. I couldn't make it make sense. And after a few minutes, I just wanted to get out of room 0 because there were no windows in there. It was stuffy. I was feeling lightheaded. And I also really wanted to cry, and I didn't want to do that in front of anyone. And so I left, and I obviously knew I wasn't making it to my dance class anymore. And I ended up walking home across the park, which is normally what I did anyway. And my wrist I had a very bad sprain. I ended up having that arm in a sling for like, I think it was like 2 weeks. It was not broken, but it was a bad sprain. And no dance class, like all that stuff. It was not a small thing. The next day, I went to the principal and I told him what had happened. I explained to him just play by play, like everything that I just shared with you, the whole way it progressed. He had missed class, he wanted to borrow my notebook, and so on. And that, I always considered him a friend. This was just incredibly like bizarre, and he had not apologized to me. He, was ignoring me. And the principal, John, he had not acknowledged me or apologized. And the principal was very much like, okay, I understand. And I will, I'll speak to John and see what his side of the story is. I was like, okay. I said there were witnesses too. Like I was not alone. And I told him, the friends who were in that room with me and saw the whole thing happen. And I kind of saw his face change too when he realized that there were witnesses. And that was it. Okay. So a few days go by, and my friends who had witnessed it said to me, what is happening? Like, is John being suspended? Have you heard anything? Have your parents been called? Like, what's happening? Because you're walking around in a sling. Like, that was not okay. Has he apologized? He was like, nothing has happened. He has not apologized to me. I have no idea what that was all about. And I don't know what's happening. So at that point, they were like, well, we want to go talk to the principal with you because this is not okay. I think they were really disturbed by what had happened as well. So we went together, same, conversation, except they were talking and explaining what they had seen. And he, at that point, the principal was very much like, okay, I understand. I've gotten the information now. Please leave it with me. I will take care of this. I don't need any more like conversation about it. It's very much like back off kind of a thing. Like I've got it. And that was it. Nothing ever happened to John. I don't know if his parents were called. I don't know if the principal called him in. I know that they donated a lot of money to the school, but I don't know anything else. And it's funny now as a grown woman. It's not funny, but it's interesting because I can tell you if either one of my kids had ever come home with that story, like what would have gone down would not have been that. There would have been a police report. And I'm not kidding. Like that's not acceptable or, remotely okay. But was the 80s. And I think we all were sort of trained to think about these things as like things that happen. And, yeah, it's not okay. But they were kind of like normalized or minimized or just nothing really happened. And the message to me was very clear. It was like, I heard you, and that's enough now. I've given you the time. You've been heard. Leave it alone now, kind of a thing. And yeah, I think the reason that I decided to write about that this week is because of the randomness of it. This was a friend. So it's like one thing if it's something that happens in a stairwell with a stranger. I had things like that happen as well growing up. I grew up in New York City. I was a latchkey kid. I was walking around the city by myself alone a lot. So things happened. But this was not that. And I was also writing about, my mom. It's very hard for me to talk about this even now sometimes, some days harder than others, but it's painful to share this. But she would drink and she would come after me physically sometimes. And that happened when I was little and, went on until I got to be her height. And then it stopped when I was eye level with her. There was one particular night where I said, we're done. But so I had experienced that kind of physical violence, but to have a friend snap like that and come after me felt so just not, I was not expecting that. And it was such it felt so casual and cruel, just to and violent, and then to just walk out and never acknowledge it. We never spoke again. We were no longer friends. We never spoke again. I remember being at parties after that where he was there. It was just like we didn't know each other anymore. I never, ever spoke to him again. And I didn't, some people knew what had happened. Certainly my two friends who were there and saw it, but I didn't tell a lot of people. I didn't make a huge thing about it. I just kind of got the message, like nothing's going to happen and just drop this. And I did. And I think that part of what has been so disconcerting for people like me in the current situation that we find ourselves in this country is the casual cruelty. That it's not that I'm, it's not that I'm shocked by people getting killed in the streets, and I was writing about that as well. If you are paying attention, then this has been happening to Black and brown bodies in our country forever. It is not new. And you don't even have to go, you can go back to Emmett Till, that's 1955, I think. But you could also go back to today. George Floyd is obviously George Floyd happened like 5 blocks away from Renee Good. And that happened, not far from Alex Pretty. Like this is all happening right there. And I think what has been incredibly painful for me is the way people are responding who are in support of this administration. The laughing emojis, the violence in the comments, the way people are just the vitriol and the hatred. And I think that part has been really, really painful to see. It genuinely, for someone like me who feels the way that I do, it's like watching 37% of the people in your country being overtaken by some kind of like empathy sucking virus or something, where you're just like, what is happening to you? What's going on? Are you like, how can you look at this and not acknowledge that it isn't okay, let alone leave like laughing emojis or be cursing at people who are devastated? Like, what is going on? And it's not just that the hatred and the laughing emojis but it's also this like unwillingness to look at a video that we can all see and acknowledge like, yes, I can see that's not okay. I mean, it shouldn't matter what party you're with. Like anyone can look at these videos and see what happened and recognize that's not okay. No one, I mean, and part of when I knew that we were in serious trouble, like part of that happened after George Floyd and I was posting about that then, and I got, a whole bunch of this kind of response that I'm talking about. A lot of people who clearly were also heartbroken and devastated and, outraged. But, and part of it is the videos, right? We're seeing it. It's like, you're seeing things with your own eyes. You don't have to, it's not just that you're reading about something or you have to take somebody's word for it. You're seeing it. And we all saw what happened with George Floyd, for example. I don't think I'll ever get that out of my head. 9 minutes and 29 seconds, Derek Chauvin's just like literally kneeling on his neck. And this man is calling for his mother and saying he can't breathe and not resisting. It was like not confusing what happened. And then you had people talking about a possible, not even, proven counterfeit $20 bill and fentanyl use. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No one gets to be, judge and jury. This isn't how it works. It's like, that's not what you do, right? Law enforcement, you arrest somebody if that's what you're going to do in that moment. And there's a legal process, due process, right? Like someone gets to have their day in court. And a lot of what's happening here is, I think, a lack of awareness of the Constitution, or a willing, like a willful ignorance. I think you get both. You get people who genuinely don't know what's in the Constitution and people who are pretending they don't know. I think you get a combination. But everyone is guaranteed due process according to our Constitution. Anyone who's here. And that means undocumented immigrants. That means citizens. That means everyone. If you are here in this country and something happens and you are being accused of something, you are guaranteed, according to our Constitution, the right to have your day in court, to know what it is that you're being accused of, and to have an opportunity to say no, like, that wasn't me, I wasn't there. You get to have representation, and if you can't afford representation, then you have someone assigned to you. Like, we have a whole system. And it's not just for some people, it's for all people. And this is the problem. When you start playing with the Constitution and deciding, oh, yeah, some people get rights, but not others, you've now compromised the entire thing. It doesn't work like that. That's not how it's written. That's not how it works. It's not like, oh, well, the Constitution applies to conservatives, but not liberals. I like these amendments for me, but not you. It just does. That's not how it is. This is not how it works. But that's how, when you see something like Alex Pretty, like he was a registered gun owner. He had a permit and he had his gun holstered. And now you have people who, for all the decades, I've had my children, I have a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old. My son is the age the Sandy Hook kids would be if they were still here. So I don't know if you can imagine, but, the day that news came out of what had happened, I had a 6-year-old. So it was not hard for me to imagine what these parents were going through. And every day since that I've had children in school, I have been worried sick, because every week we continue to have school shootings in this country. And every time someone like me says, we've got to have a conversation about sane gun control legislation and about more mental health support in the school system, and we need to be approaching this issue. We have more mass shootings here in this country than any other country by far. We're the best at it, okay? By far. We need to be having a conversation about what to do. We have more guns than people in this country. We need to have a conversation. You know what you hear? You know what you hear. You hear, don't touch my guns. Second Amendment, don't touch my guns. You know, sorry about those dead kids, but my guns are more important. Do not even talk about that. Don't tread on my rights. Don't touch my Second Amendment rights. I can have, you know, an AR-15 if that's what I want, even though I'm not in the military. It's like, if I want to pretend that I'm in, you know, Call of Duty, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stockpile guns if I want to, and you can't stop me. But the second you have a liberal man who's upset because his city is being overrun by ICE agents who one of them just shot an unarmed mother in the face 3 times and then called her an effing bitch when he was done. You know, he goes, now that's another conversation too. There's so many people there in Minneapolis, in the Twin Cities, like they're on the ground saying, you know, these things that are being described as protests are not protests. This is like ICE agents are showing up. You don't know where they're going to be. They're all over the place. They show up, people start whistling and honking to warn their neighbors. Hey, stay inside. These people are here, stay inside. So there are a lot of people that were saying it is very likely he was going somewhere. The street that he was on is full of restaurants. There's a donut store. There's like a whole bunch of places right there where people go to eat. It was a Saturday morning. And a lot of people who live there were saying it is very likely he was just going about his Saturday and had his gun holstered and then heard honking and whistles. And that's how life is there right now. And I want to talk about that for a second too, but I'm going to take a minute. It's completely, so I don't know. That was not a protest, very likely. That was a bunch of people who stopped because they knew that ICE agents had pulled up in their vehicles and they were trying to help their neighbors and keep things moving. He was there in the middle of the street, like trying to direct traffic going by, and he was filming. People film, and I've said this and I'll keep saying it, they film because if they don't film, all we're left with is the BS stories about what happened, the lies, the blatant, total lies that this government is telling us about what occurred instead of what actually occurred. They're wildly different. You know, if you look at Renee Good, if you look at what happened there, you have Kristi Noem saying that the agents were snowed in and, you know, she was ramming them with her vehicle. And they were surrounded by angry rioters. That's what she said. You can go back and look. The ICE agents were snowed in. They were surrounded by angry rioters, and Renee Good was ramming them with her vehicle. And so an ICE agent shot her because he was worried for his life and the life of his friends. That is not what occurred. Anyone with eyeballs, you know, we've all seen the video. And he was angry because these 2 queer women were not intimidated by him. You know, they weren't. They were sitting there. Renee could not have been more friendly, more polite. And her wife was, you know, giving him like, whatever, like, this is how you're spending your time, dude? Really? You're going to harass people and you're going to pull people off the street, good people? These are not the worst of the worst. These are not hardened criminals. These are just human beings trying to make a good life here. You know, it's out of all the people who've been deported, 70% of them have no criminal record at all. Nothing. Zero, no criminal record. Of the 30% of people who have some kind of record, 25% of them are like traffic violations. So, of all the people who've been deported since this madness began, 5% of them have criminal violations, convictions. You're telling me this is what we needed to do to get that 5% of people off the streets? It absolutely is not. The waste of taxpayer dollars, the violence, the death, the violation of the Constitution. And please, read and make sure you understand. First of all, we have a First Amendment right. You are allowed to film ICE raids in public spaces. That is a First Amendment right. Second Amendment right, I shouldn't have to tell anyone who's supporting this administration that if you have a permit to be carrying a gun in a state that allows that, concealed carry or open carry, then there's no problem with this man having that gun holstered. He didn't touch it. He didn't go for it at any time. And they executed him. And anyone with eyes saw that happen. You have Fourth Amendment rights. You have Eighth Amendment rights. No cruel and unusual punishment. You have rights to privacy. That's your Fourth Amendment. The 14th Amendment. There are all these different amendments that you are guaranteed here that are being violated by this government. That is what is happening. And that's why people are out there filming. They're trying to keep their neighbors safe. I think for a lot of you, you know this. I knew that we were in trouble. A few months ago, I went and had coffee with a friend I have known for 20 years. And I had coffee with him because he was posting some really strange things online. And, I had pushed back. And I texted him. I was like, what is happening? Like, I've seen some of these posts, like, what's going on? I don't, and he said, he said a bunch of stuff. And I, at that point, he was like, why don't we have coffee? We can talk. And I was like, I'll have coffee because it's a 20-year friendship. And I'm going to try to understand what he is, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Now, in the text that we exchanged, I did not know that he was fully in support of this administration. If I had known that, I probably would not have gone for coffee, because I think if you can be fully in support of this administration, this was going back a few months. So this is before Renee Good. It's before Alex Preddy. It's before a lot of, these things have happened. It's before Liam Ramos. It's before all of that, but still, I think if I had known, I wouldn't have. But there were, I wasn't totally sure what was going on. So we go and have coffee, and it becomes clear to me as we're talking that he is fully in support of this, and that he likes the president because he, quote unquote, tells it like it is. This is a straight white man who, by the way, has dual citizenship and can go anywhere at any time that he wants to. And a yoga teacher. And I just was like, I just don't understand, how you can support a man who says he grabs women by the pussy. Let's just start there. How do you get past that? How do you get past the fact that this person lies? I grew up in New York City and nobody was confused. He would hire people to do jobs. He would negotiate a contract. They'd agree to a price. These mom and pop companies would do the job, and then they'd get half up front and the job would be complete, and they'd say, okay, second half. And he would say, nah, I'm not going to give you the second half. If you want it, you can sue me for it. And they couldn't sue him for it because it costs money to take people to court and hire attorneys. And, and then if you don't win, then you're totally screwed. You got to pay the other person's legal fees too. He put people out of business left and right. He's not a good person. Nobody was confused. It's very strange for me to understand, even just on that basic level, before we even get past all the other stuff that's been going on. How do you get past that? But anytime I would ask a question directly like that, it just was this like deflection. It was just this deflection, sort of like almost like, like a mountain and just like oil going down the mountain, like just not, no real, nothing kind of getting in there. And then at a certain point, he brought up George Floyd, and he said something about fentanyl. And I was like, okay, are you serious right now? I mean, is this really where we are? You're going to talk about George Floyd and talk about fentanyl right now? Because, then I've got to be done. Like, I can't continue this conversation. I mean, he was murdered in broad daylight. The air was driven out of his lungs, and the end. Like, that's it. And I just can't do the hypocrisy and the lying. I just can't do it. I can't be in a conversation with someone who's looking me in the eye and, we're going to try to like pretend that things are not what they are. I can't do it. I grew up like that. It's very much like an alcoholic household thing, is like something dreadful and violent happens, at night, and in the morning you get up and you're supposed to act like everything's okay. I grew up doing that. I will not do that anymore. It took me a really long time to heal from that, and I will not do that for anyone anymore. If that is what a friend is asking me to do, that's going to be someone I can't be friends with anymore. I'll have any kind of conversation with anyone. I did not raise my voice. I went there to listen and to have a reasonable conversation. But the minute you're going to try to pretend that George Floyd was killed for any other reason except that knee on his neck, we're done. I'm done. I'm out. Just like I'm going to be out if you want to try to tell me that, Renee Good was driving her car at that man, and she was not. She backed up, she turned her wheels all the way away and was trying to flee a dangerous situation. I'm not doing that for anyone. If you want to pretend you didn't see what you saw, that's for you to deal with on your own time. I'm just not going to engage with that. If you want to pretend that that he was in any way being aggressive, or he tried to help that woman who got sprayed in the face with a chemical agent. Then he got sprayed in the face with a chemical agent himself. Then they pulled him off of her and onto the ground, and they pistol whipped him and kicked him, and then they executed him. They shot him 10 times. So if you can't do that with me and just be real about what occurred, that's okay, but I'm not going to engage in, a pretend conversation about pretend things. So, and if you want to have a conversation and say that's okay somehow, I'm not going to do that. That's not okay. And it shouldn't be okay with anyone. And it shouldn't be okay with anyone for any person is the thing. It shouldn't be okay with anyone. And the thing about, about all of this, like, this is what I was saying earlier, like I wanted to get back to, there are so many names that I could be Tamir Rice and Elijah McClain and, Breonna Taylor. And this is not, like I was saying, this is not a new thing. Eric Garner, Sonia Massey. This is like George Floyd is, sadly, one of many. It is unusual for us to see white citizens getting shot on the streets. It is they're becoming more and more, now it's like, oh, you're liberal, so we'll just shoot you. um, you know, One of the things that I wanted to mention here, and I think most people are very savvy now with this stuff, but if this were really about immigration enforcement, they would not be in Minnesota. Okay. Minnesota has 80,000 undocumented immigrants total. To put it in perspective, right? California, where I live, has like 2.7 million undocumented immigrants roughly. And Texas has about 2 million. And New York City has about 850,000, New York State rather, 850,000. And Florida has about 700,000. And they're diverting all of this attention to Minnesota, where there are 80,000. Are you really confused about why? The president hates the governor of Minnesota. He hates Tim Walz. And they're also, Minnesota has a lot of, there's a real safety net there. There's a real social safety net going on there. And that is not what this administration wants to see. So they're very obviously targeting blue states, particularly the ones with governors that this president hates. He is a petty man. And again, if you can't see that somehow, I'm not sure why. He's extremely petty, cannot let go of, he's still talking about the 2020 election from 6 years ago, okay? That there was a recount. There were three recounts in the state of Georgia. The third one by hand. It was certified by a Republican. Multiple Republican appointed judges, were like, there's no evidence. Nothing happened. This was a free and fair election. And he's still, And by the way, Pam Bondi told Governor Walz, we'll pull ICE out of there if you give us your voter rolls. Voter rolls, in case you don't know about this is where your social security number, your driver's license number, your very, very sensitive, confidential information is in your voter roll. That is, the federal government is not supposed to get that information. That's not their business. That's your private business. Your vote is your private business and confidential, right? You don't have to tell anybody who you're voting for. You go into the, in the old days, now we're doing a lot of voting by mail, but you go in the ballot box, you close the curtain and you cast your vote. The voter rolls are those are sacred. The governors should not be getting pressure from the federal government to turn over. Governors should not be having that conversation with the president and the administration and 8 states have already done it. They've turned over the voter rolls, which is a violation. The people in those states should be suing because their rights are being violated, their rights to privacy. But, those are red states that are supporting this administration still largely. I know that the approval rating is way down, but there's so much that we could dig into. And I would like to, there's a whole patriarchy thing going on here. There's a lot of, this country really was set up that way by a bunch of white men who wrote the Declaration of Independence and wrote the Constitution. Now, I happen to think the Constitution is a pretty great document. It was meant to be a living document that, could change with the times. It's why there are amendments. That's why there's a Supreme Court and you can bring cases and prove why things need to be, updated, because the founding fathers knew things were going to change in ways they could not imagine. But it's really important that we're all clear that these were white men of means who wrote this document. And when they said all men are created equal, they meant all white men are created equal, which is why only white men had rights according to the original Constitution. And everyone else has had to fight like hell for rights. Women, did not get the vote till 1920. And that's only white women. Like black women had to keep fighting until 1965. You got to know your history. This is why they're trying to get rid of banning books, and they're trying to control the curriculums. And there's a lot of stuff going on here that is straight out of the authoritarian playbook. And this is what a lot of us who were like talking about Project 2025 leading up to the election were really worried about, is everything that we're seeing. And this is not some, I told you, this is heartbreaking for me. And that is another thing that I was, trying to write about here, is when you see things like Liam Ramos, right? This 5-year-old little boy, the comments in the bunny hat, right? The things that people were saying under these posts are so heartless and soulless that for someone like me, it is gutting. It really hollows me out when I see that. It's probably not in the way these people want or intend. I think there is that casual cruelty where they just want to stick it to the liberals or whatever. It's not that's happening for me. It's an absolute, I feel so, I feel so sad for all of us that this is what's happening to these people, that they have no empathy, that they could look at this kid, this 5-year-old little boy who never did a thing wrong, and be like, yeah, well, his dad, it's his parents' fault. Okay, they're from Ecuador. They came here seeking asylum. They did it, quote unquote, the right way. There were no deportation orders for his dad. No criminal record whatsoever. It's just a family trying to make a better life for themselves here. And, there's all this, I see these comments, right? People saying, well, he abandoned him, and the mom wouldn't open the door. No. Okay. First of all, the mother's pregnant, and the father is screaming at her, don't open the door because they're going to take you too. They have a middle school child who they're both worrying, if they take mom, dad, and Liam, this poor kid is going to come home to an empty house. It doesn't matter that his dad, that they're doing it the right way. It doesn't matter. That's the part that a lot of people are not getting, that are still supporting this administration. It doesn't matter if you're doing it the right way. It doesn't matter if there's a legal process underway. None of it matters. They'll take you. They took him. And it's not, he didn't abandon they used him to try to get the mother to open the door, and they absolutely would have taken her. There was a family member who lives in the house with them, standing outside begging the ICE officers, please leave him with me. Leave him with me. I live here. I'll bring him right inside the house. Leave him with me. In a situation like that, where that kind of thing is going down, the parents can assign a guardian. And the ICE agents right there on the scene can do a background check right there and leave the child with the guardian that's being assigned by the parents. They refused. There were school officials there. There was a school board official person right there, and then 2 of the principals from the school came when they realized what was happening to try to support. And that, I think her name is Mary Grunwald. She was begging them, please leave him with me. He knows me. I see him every day at school. Leave him with me. I'll take custody of him right now. Please don't take him. He's 5. Please don't do this. And they wouldn't. And there's this BS story about, there's kind-hearted from the VP lying to people. I think when we've gotten to the place where you can look at something like that and be in support of it, you've lost your mind. You've lost it. Like you've lost the thread of like what is okay as a country. This is not, it's not okay. Now they're home. He's home. As of today, he is home with his dad because a judge said this is unacceptable. All they wanted was a reasonable amount of due process that is being denied to them and to many, many people right now. The violence has to stop and they need to be released and sent home. And they are home now, as they should be. This never should have happened. But the trauma for them, for their whole family, for the mom, for all of them is devastating. It's devastating. They didn't deserve that. These are good people. These are hardworking people. And, anyone that is not getting it, you're and there are a lot of people not getting it. I know that I saw, Paul Rand is on 60 Minutes and he was saying like it's not okay. Like what's happening. It's not okay. That the Alex, Pretty shooting and the Renee, like all of it is not okay. And that he wasn't being aggressive and he was executed and it's not okay. Rand Paul. That's weird for me to even be telling you that, but that's where we are now. It's like, this is not that he's suddenly grown a conscience, but I think if you're getting to the point where even someone like that is saying, yeah, I watched the video and what they're saying versus what I saw that's not true. Like he didn't do anything wrong. We've come into like a very strange place. If the people all this time who've been saying we need to have like a conversation about sane gun control legislation, like me, are now talking to the people who've been saying, we can't do that. Don't touch my gun. Like for me to have to say to those people, wait a second, I'm sorry. You've been telling me for the last 20 years, basically, that I have to be worried about my kids every day at school because of your precious guns. But now this liberal guy, he's not allowed to be carrying, even though he didn't touch his gun. That's grounds for them to execute him. Please, just stop yourself from being that hypocritical. Like try to stop yourself, because that can't be good for your soul. And I think that's part of like what I was really trying to get at is when there are people who say things like, and this is everywhere, these days, like, oh, I wish like people wouldn't be so political. I liked it better when people weren't like so political. I liked it better when, we had an imperfect democracy. Yes, we needed work. We've always needed to work to be who we said we were, right? Like I said it, I don't know, 10 minutes ago or something. White men wrote the Declaration of Independence and wrote the Constitution. And when they said all men are created equal, they meant all white men. We have always had work to do, we have never been who we say we are. So we've been working. The trajectory is slow. The wheels of justice are, slower than I think most of us would like. But I miss the days where I still believed in, I still thought that we all had respect for the Constitution and all wanted to be living in some form of democracy and wanted to be working together to make the world a better place for all of us. Where we wanted to be trying to like acknowledge that we have a climate crisis for our kids and our grandkids and they're, I miss those days. The people that are like, oh, I wish everybody wouldn't be political. Like, I wish you would grow up. I wish you would grow up now and stop like not engaging with what is happening in the world. I wish you would care. about other people. And, really check your sources of news when you hear things like, oh, he abandoned his kid. Like, he did not abandon his child. Um, it's just, I wish people would, when you see people like me, when you see people that you have always thought were like incredibly kind, right? And now they're really beside themselves. It's not that they've suddenly become angry, militant people. It's that they're grieving and devastated and heartbroken and trying to get you to care. That's what's happening. It's not that they're suddenly like, oh, they're so angry. Yeah, I'm angry. I'm also like really in a state of grief that is hard for me to get across to you. I am more in a state of grief than I am enraged. I get enraged sometimes because I am so the hypocrisy really does that really, because I grew up with so much gaslighting and all of that stuff, I have a very like zero tolerance for that. But I'm really not enraged most of the time. I'm in grief. I'm grieving for this country, for the friendships like that I'm losing because I have too many people who are, forget about my friend who's, in support of this administration. I can't. I'm sorry if you're in support of this still. What about the Epstein files? Are you all watching this come out? Like, I just can't anymore. Like, if you're still in support of this, then we can't. I know we're not going to be friends because everything that comes out of this man's mouth is horrible. He hates women. He's a total misogynist. He's an absolute bigot, racist, quiet piggy. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the pets of the people. Like, come on, everyone. It's enough now. You got to acknowledge this is not a good person. And if you're still supporting this and you're watching people get shot on the streets and you're still supporting it and you're watching little kids get, shoved into the backs of cars and taken to detention centers where there's no heat and inedible food and you're still supporting this, like you're watching people who are violating the Constitution every day. You're engaging in this, disingenuous conversation about like, oh, well, you can't bring a gun to a protest. I'm sorry. Could we just like roll the tape back to January 6th? What are you talking about right now? There are a million photos of MAGA people at protests carrying guns and lots of them. So please stop, but where I'm at is not, it's sad. It's grief. I'm watching my country. It's like watching someone you love on life support. And that is how I feel. I feel, that gutted is, when you start othering people, when you decide like, I don't care about that person because they look different or they pray differently or they think differently than I do. So I don't care what happens to them anymore. You're forgetting something, which is every single person that you care about, that you love, they walk out the door in the morning. They're strangers to everyone they encounter. They walk around in this world and I don't know, 98% of the people that they're going to encounter in a day, they don't know them. If you don't care about strangers and what's happening to them, why do you think anyone's going to care about the people you love out in the world? Why do you think your people are safe? You got to care about people. It's common sense, and this whole idea of you just need to stay home and listen to law enforcement. These are not police. And the best thing I can do for my kids is try to take care of my neighbors, because I don't want to leave them in a world where we don't care about our neighbors, where we don't care if some people have constitutional rights but not others. Because the minute you decide some people get them but other people don't, you don't know it, but you just eroded any value the Constitution has. Your rights are now eroded. If you don't care enough about other people, then care about that, is what I would say. Okay. It's really rough out there. I know that it's hard. I do. I have a lot of friends who are having a tough time right now. And just, some weeks are hard. This was one of the hardest weeks for me so far. And I did go to a breathing workshop. And one of the things that the guy who was running it said is, you are not delicate. He said that, a number of times. You are not delicate. And it was really helpful for me, and maybe it'll be helpful for you. It's like, I am sensitive. I feel things deeply. I'm glad I'm like that. I would much rather be someone who's having a hard time right now because the world is so painful than someone who's like, la, 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 I'm going to go have lunch now. And then I'm going to go do my hike. And then I'm going to go, I'd much rather be me feeling heartbroken than someone who's checked out. So that, but I'm not delicate. I'm strong. I'm just hurting. It hurts. It's painful. So, if that resonates with you, I also have friends who are like, I don't know how to help or what to do, or nothing feels like enough. I think everybody's feeling that way. Please call your senators and your representatives. I know it might feel like, I don't know. I feel like I don't get anything back. I don't get anything in response. The reason that Liam Ramos is home is because people would not stop. They wouldn't stop calling. I call every day. You can use 5calls.org and it'll give you the phone numbers. Eventually just put them in your phone, but and you can call every day. The DHS funding bill, like that, is because people would not stop. So they took the funding for ICE, they separated it out from the rest of the funding bill. There were like 6 other things like FEMA and the Coast Guard. They separated it. They were trying to shove them all in together like they do. And, finally, like the Democrats and some Republicans found their spine and said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to separate that out until we can, listen, while the Democrats are in the minority, they're not going to be able to abolish ICE. Even if they were to not fund it any further, they've already got like tens of billions of dollars from the big, ugly bill already. They've already got a giant slush fund. So, there's a limited amount here that Democrats can do. But one of the things they're trying to do is get them unmasked, which I do think would help, because these guys right now, they feel like they can be anonymous and violent and shoot people in the head. And then they just get whisked away to another state, and this government is protecting them, and they don't want to share their names. They block the local authorities from gathering evidence. Like, it's super corrupt. Why do we not have an arrest for either of these murders, right? It's absolutely outrageous. So getting them unmasked, I think, would be very good. Some kind of code of conduct would be nice. Like, don't shoot people in the face. Maybe that would be a good one. Don't pepper spray people in the face. Like, that would be another one that would be good. Don't beat people. Don't pull people. If somebody's trying to show you their passport because they're a citizen, maybe let them do that instead of just like telling them you don't give up and throwing them on the ground and handcuffing them and detaining them for half the day because you feel like it. That would be a good one. Maybe letting people use the bathroom if they're in a detention center, or get medical care if they need it, so they're not losing their pregnancies, which is happening. there's a lot of things that they can try to do. Do I think it's going to work very well? No. I think these guys are enjoying themselves out there. I really do. I think they're having a good old time out there. I think they're enjoying like being awful to people, and that's part of what was just so devastating for me last week is the cruelty, is the just, somebody just picking you up off your feet and throwing you into a desk for absolutely no reason. Somebody popping you off in the head because they feel like it. A bunch of two guys, just shooting you even though you're motionless in the street because they think they're playing Call of Duty, with someone's life, someone's son, someone's brother, someone's friend, someone's nurse. It's disgusting, really. So, yeah, I'm heartbroken. But in order to help, right? It's like calling your senators and your representatives and telling them how you feel. And it's okay if you cry. I cry on the phone all the time when I leave messages. I'm sure Adam Schiff knows knows my name. I cry. It doesn't matter. Just call and do your thing. Alex Padilla, these are my representatives. I have left messages where I am just beside myself crying. It's fine. You're a human being. Say your name, say your address, say your email, they work for you. You need to tell them how you feel. It does matter. And then, boycott the companies that are supporting this administration. You know who they are, right? Amazon, huge. Try to break your addiction. If you're addicted to Amazon, start slow if you have to, but really try to find things somewhere else. Stop feeding Jeffrey Bezos. He does not need any more money. And he's not a good person. He's feeding this whole nightmare. Your convenience in exchange for this madness? No. I understand if people are homebound and sometimes people live so far away and, you're stuck. But for everybody else, no. Try to shop local. Support your small businesses. Really support I'm a small business owner. Help us. This is hard. Use your dollars wisely if you're going to spend. Try not to buy things you don't need right now. But if you're going to buy something, try to shop wisely. That's a way. And boycott companies like Target, like Amazon, like Home Depot, like Hilton. Hilton hotels. Don't be staying there right now. They're letting these ICE people stay there. Just start boycotting. Go to the protests, find mutual aid in your city, those organizations, and learn how you can help support your neighbors who are probably really scared right now. Have a block party. Get your neighbors' phone numbers. Start talking to people. Ask if anybody wants to be part of a neighborhood watch, just to watch out for each other. See if there's someone on your block who can't get to the grocery store anymore. Maybe you could pool together and just start helping in that way. These are things you can do. You don't have to get it all right. You don't have to do everything every day, but do something. Do some small thing every day. Keep resisting, keep fighting back, keep saying no to this if this is how you feel. And you don't have to get it, you don't have to get it right. You just do the best that you can. We've never done this before. We're learning, we're learning. But don't do nothing, because that'll make you feel powerless. Don't do nothing. Doing something will make you feel better. I left some emails in the essay that you could write to some CEOs hey, I'm not shopping at your company right now because you're supporting this nightmare. I just wanted to let you know. Have the day that you deserve. Thanks. Bye. Take some action. It's one small thing. It'll make you feel better. It'll make you feel like you're not just watching this happen and not doing anything. Okay. I love you. I am sending you all the love in the world. Don't give up. The subtitle, again, love always wins in the end. This is the epic battle part, that's what I was saying. It's sometimes we've all seen these movies and read these books and we've been reading about this stuff forever, right? There's a giant There's a giant battle between good versus evil, right? And you don't know what's going to happen, and maybe the battle goes on for a really long time. But what always happens in the end? Love is always operating at a higher frequency. People don't want this. They don't want this violence and this. It doesn't feel good in your soul to be a hateful person. It doesn't. People don't want this. So just hang in there, but don't do nothing. Do something. You'll feel better. All right. I'll see you soon.